Hey YouTube, Brian LCS, and welcome to another Comic Book Community 411. And my special guest tonight is Empyre Comics.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Welcome, man. Appreciate you coming on. So before we jump into the questions, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your channel and yourself?
All right, thanks for having me, Brian. Like the name says, I'm Empyre Comics. My channel is about 2 years old. Usually do mostly like dollar bin spec, a lot of hauls. I do a lot of crazy hauls, dollar bin spec, MCU spec, a lot of CGC unboxings. I slowed down with those, but there's a few coming back up pretty soon, and but stuff like that, maybe start going a little bit of a different direction later on this year.
Okay. So my first question is always, how did you get into comic book collecting?
Okay. Let me see. I first started collecting comics in 1991. I was 13 years old. But I think what happened before that, the year prior, I used to collect baseball cards and basketball cards. And when the Marvel Universe Series 1 cards came out, they were right next to the baseball and basketball cards. So like I kind of like went over that way, started grabbing a few of those, and I got hooked on the cards. I wanted to get the whole set, reading the back, and I knew I was familiar with most of the characters because, like, some of the characters, because like Spider-Man had a show, a cartoon, the Hulk had a cartoon, so I knew some of the characters. But reading the back and about the teams and everybody in Origins, I got hooked on that. I loved it, and maybe I would say like a year after, because I used to draw a lot back then. A year after, I was walking by one of the newsstands. I grew up in New York City in the Bronx, so it was a little newsstand right off the
Right, yeah,
train.
yeah.
Get off the train to come home, and there's a newsstand, and I looked, and I saw, actually, I have it here. This book right here is
Oh, turtles.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Adventures issue 17. Let's see if you can see it there. I saw this book and I grabbed it just to draw because the turtles were popular, like in '91. So I wanted to draw the turtles, and maybe I think a week or so later, I caught off, and I saw a Web of Spider-Man book, my first Spider-Man, my first Marvel book. I grabbed it to draw, but when I read it, man, I don't know, I got hooked, and I had to get the next one to see what happens. And from there, I went to ASM, and that was all. It was all she wrote, man. I actually got it here. This was the my first Spider-Man Marvel book, the one that started me on it. Web of Spider-Man 75.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, similar story, right? I picked up, I would pick them up at 7-Eleven, convenience store. I had no idea like what the frequency that books were published. I would
yeah.
just go, you go to the store and just check and see if there was a new issue and just, pick it up. But yeah, New York City or, Bronx, Brooklyn, I remember, not so many newsstands today, but, you
Yeah.
know, in the 90s, 2000s, there, magazines and comic books and newspapers and everything that just on the street, the corner.
Oh yeah, on the street. Like I didn't know about. I didn't really know anything about comics. I didn't know about comic book shops or the whole, any terminology or the old community. Nothing about that. I was 13 years old.
Right, right.
So I only went to where I was around me, and so with that newsstand. But I don't know if when you were growing up, like the little delis or the bodegas in the corner, they might have a spinner rack. So
Right.
I literally picked all my books up from the spinner racks and from the newsstands until maybe, man, after the first year, my father took me to my first comic book shop in Yonkers, Dragon's Den. I don't know if you remember Dragon's Den in
No, I don't
Yonkers.
think I know that one.
They were pretty big back then, and I remember walking in there like, holy, this is crazy, and
Yeah, oh, yeah,
and that
yeah,
was
yeah.
it, man. I started going into back issues, and that's one thing. Like I don't know why people there's always a talking about people don't know when to jump into a comic book. And like back then, I jumped into a Spider-Man. I wanted to find out more. I just went and started buying the back issues, and I don't know.
Right.
I feel like people could do that now. Same thing.
Yeah. All right. So you're in. So have you ever gotten out of collecting, or have you pretty much collected?
No, I
No.
I started in '91, and it was around like my first ASM book. The one that came out at that time was it had Venom in it, and that's another one that I thought. So Venom was like my favorite villain from the beginning because I thought this was crazy. A guy that looks like Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was pretty afraid of him. So I collected ASM, X-Men, all the X-Men titles, and every now and then if there was a crossover like Infinity Gauntlet or something going on with Avengers, I might pick it up. But I was religiously collecting Uncanny, X-Men and the Spider-Man books, and I collected that all the way till about the Clone Saga, and a little bit into the Clone Saga, I kind of got out. Came back in around the original Civil War, then got back out again until 2018. And I've been in since.
Okay. Yeah, the Clone Saga seems to kind of huffled a bunch of people and got them out of collecting
Yeah.
for a little while anyway.
Yeah. Now that I'm back in and I can read, and you're older, you read of what was going on back then. It seemed like a lot of people dropped Spider-Man or comics around that time.
Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, I wasn't collecting or reading at that time, and I haven't gone back and reread that yet. But I've heard the stories like that. It was really not fun.
Well,
like a lot of.
I wouldn't say the Clone. I went through the Clone Saga, but it was after when Ben took over.
Okay.
That's when I kind of like dropped it. Like, this is, and I just
Never went
dropped
back.
it after that.
Yeah.
What were you collecting back then?
Well, I collected mainly Spider-Man. So I collected, ASM was really the first books I collected, and then Spectacular, and then Web came out, and McFarlane's Spider-Man. So I was basically collecting all of the Spider-Man titles. I would collect Marvel Team Up because Spider-Man was the the main character in the book.
Like me, Spider-Man was your favorite back then?
Yeah. I grew up Long Island, so as a kid, I'm in Suffolk County, 2 counties over from Queens County. So I'm like, as a kid, I'm like, I can go over to Queens and I can go see Spider-Man. Or maybe I'll go into the city and see him swinging around. So that's how, that connection as a young kid. Like I live near him. Maybe I can go see him. So that was my initial connection with him.
That's cool. So, and you collected straight through as well, or you?
No, I got out too. Like in my probably when you got in, like 90, 91, 92 is probably when I stopped, and then I was out for like 30 years. So I didn't get back in until like 2020, 2021.
Okay, yeah, you got a lot. You know what's crazy that I realized a lot of people in the community now, a lot got back in around between 2018 and 2020.
COVID. It was COVID for me because I still had a bunch of my books from when I was a kid that I had collected. I had kept them with me over the years. And now that I was working from home and had some extra free time because of COVID, I started going through them and started looking at some of the values of those books and realized that I had some key, I had 252, I had ASM, 300, 298, 290. I basically had that run.
Yeah.
And so I had a bunch of books that were, worth some money. And so my initial getting back in was really just selling my old books. And then I started going to the local comic shop and started getting back into collecting. And then I regretted selling the books that I sold because I sold a bunch of those ASM books and before I really kind of got back into collecting. So now I'm trying to go back and collect those again now.
That's what I'm doing. One of my main things is I have like an ASM Grail run that I'm trying to do. I want to collect from issue 100 on because I had I lost all the books that I collected when I was younger. I lost all that. I moved a lot when I went to Florida, and somehow it got left behind. And man, that broke my heart for years. Like, I had about 4 long boxes of comics, and I lost. But when I got back in now, I've been trying to collect the ones that I had. That meant a lot to me, or that I remember that, man, I like this issue for whatever reason, and I'm trying to slowly get those and do my little ASM Grail run, try to get all those.
That's kind of what I'm working on now, is now working on ASM. I'd like to be able to collect the full run, but those sub 100 books are so expensive. So I have a few. I pick them up if I can get them inexpensively. I'll try to pick them up, but there's so many key books in those first 100 and they're so they're costly. So
in the last 2 years, I had no idea. I knew they were worth money when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I collected Wizard and so like, oh man, even when I didn't know, I kind of knew like, okay, these are collectibles. They're gonna be worth something.
Right.
I had no idea about this with CGC and how these books could thousands of dollars. I'm like, this is crazy. And You know.
Yeah, no, it's changed because when I got back in, when I when I left collecting, there was no grading, so it was always all
Yeah.
raw books. And so when I got back in, I had to really learn a lot about CGC and grading, and
Same.
that was all new to me. And then too, there's just all the amount of variant covers because
There
when I
you go.
collected, it was 12 issues a year and one annual. They
Yeah.
published ASM once a month and one
Yeah.
annual, so it was 13 issues. So it was pretty easy to collect because you work now they're publishing Spider-Man 3 times a month or twice a
Yeah.
month.
They're
So
trying to reach that 1,000 as fast as possible.
yeah.
But
So
it
it
was the
was a
same.
lot different when I got back in. It was like, wow, this is totally changed from
Yeah,
years ago.
I felt the same way. When I jumped in, the variants were big, and I remember I did a pull list, and when I went to collect, they would give me cover Bs, and I didn't know. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I remember telling them, no, because I didn't even go weekly. I would go once a month, pick up my books.
Right,
I
right.
said, look, I know it's too late, but I don't want these Bs. I just want cover A's. I had no idea. Well, I was like, what's a cover B? A variant? What is that? And it's okay. Look, just give me the original covers. That's all I want.
Right.
I didn't want. So in 2018, I was like, no variants. Fast forward to 2023, I got like 5 short boxes of variants right now.
Yeah, I know. Well, it's tough today because the artwork is so great.
Hmm.
Some of the variant covers, the artwork is just amazing. So
It is.
you end up. I do the same thing. I try to always get the A cover for any Spider-Man book, but I'm always buying some variant or two because of the cover, the artwork, and yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to do that.
And then they catch you when it's one of those that, it's a set. And you're like, oh man, I got to get all of them now.
Yeah, I'm
So,
glad I'm not like a complete, have to complete like because some of the, like even Miles Morales now, I'm collecting Miles Morales, and there's so many different variants in some of
mhm.
his. So I'm sticking to at least the A. I always want the A cover, and then maybe a variant or two, but
Yeah.
there's no way that I could collect all of them because some of I think issue one for the new Miles series, there were like 30 different covers.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I don't understand, And I think I figured out Marvel's trick though. I think like when there's a series going out, a new book, and they don't think it's gonna do high numbers, they'll throw like a Peach Momoko variant or some kind of variant where they know people are gonna want because
Right.
it's collected or it's a set with something else, so that title still gets somewhat sold. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It
There's
bumps up their numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
slick with that one. I'm like, oh, I ain't buying that. And the next thing I know, oh man, it has a Momo set. Okay, I got to get it.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I think right. You're collecting some of the Star Wars. Who's the one artist
The
that's doing the Star Wars covers?
is the Lucasfilm, the anniversary ones, with the
Yes, the
gold
anniversary.
trim.
Right. Yeah.
I'm down to, man. I think I forget the total, but I think there's over 30, 35 books, maybe even 42. Is that a 32 or 42? I don't remember, but I'm down to just missing 2 left.
Okay.
I need the one with Ahsoka Tano on it, and the one with oh man, who's the other one? I forget. But I'm down to 2. I finally down
All
to
right.
2.
All right. So you're close.
Yeah.
So all right. So you've been collecting, for the last couple of years. So how did you make the leap to starting a YouTube channel? When did you decide? All right, I'm going to start putting this out on video.
Yeah, COVID.
Hmm.
Right when I got back into comics in 2018. I found I always call it comic book YouTube, like the YouTube world, the comic book world on YouTube. I found that I would say in 2019, um, because when I jumped back in, I didn't know I missed so much. So
Right.
when I would read something and they were referencing something, it just hit me. Let me YouTube what they're referencing, a storyline or something. And the first one that popped up was what's the dude? Comics Explained with Rob, that guy.
Okay. Yeah.
And because he breaks down like whole story arcs.
Right.
So from watching him on YouTube, it led to different people on YouTube. And then I wanted to, like, I didn't know where to go to find out what new books were coming out. So one day I just typed in new comic book day books on YouTube, and pop culture philosopher, Rock and Robbie popped up, giving his little breakdown the day before, and from then I got hooked, and I saw like, oh wait, there's so many other people on here, and what they're doing is so cool, and I just started. I slowly got off of even watching regular TV, and I just stayed on YouTube all through COVID. I was on YouTube watching so many people on my own personal channel. So like I knew so many people on my personal channel, and then towards the end of 2020, 2021, I'm like, you know what? I think I want to do this. It seems fun. I mean, it was. I mean, there was nothing else to do. Everybody was stuck at home. I'm like, this is fun. I got I'm collecting comics again. I'm getting some CDC stuff coming. Let me just do a video and show everybody what I got, and that's how it started. I
Yeah.
started videoing, recording in my closet because I had my short boxes stacked in my closet. I didn't know where to stand, so I stood in front of my short boxes and put my phone in the, one of them little shelves and recorded from there. And
That's funny.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I was similar. I actually went to YouTube to figure out because I was starting to sell some of my books. So I said I don't really know how I need to package these books, and I obviously don't want them to get damaged being
yeah,
shipped. So that's what I did. I went to YouTube to figure out how to pack a comic book to ship it, and then
okay.
same thing. I fell into the rabbit hole. I think Reggie Collects was one of the first channels I
That's what I was gonna
found.
say. He's probably the first one you'll get
And
for
then
that.
then I found other channels, and then yeah, at some point, then when I started collecting, I said, oh, maybe I should start making videos. I can make a YouTube channel, just
Yeah,
show off what I picked up and things like that. So yeah, it's funny, you kind of just fall into it.
yeah, man, and it's fun, man. I wound up doing this so much and hanging out with the community online so much that like the real world people, I didn't do anything. I was always on YouTube. I was talking to you guys and everybody on YouTube, man. I find it's so much fun. I love the community, man. I love once I found it, I was like, this is great. Because I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, you didn't tell anybody you collected comic
Right,
books, especially in New York City. You know what I
right,
mean?
right,
In the Bronx, nobody knew. It was almost like it was taboo, and nobody knew. Even to this day, sometimes it's so hard for me to remember it's acceptable. And when I
right,
would have people
right.
come over the house, and I would walk them really fast by my comic book room, thinking, oh no. But it's so
Yeah, no,
acceptable now.
I was lucky enough to have a few friends that collected too. So,
Oh, okay.
but it wasn't. I didn't have a lot of friends, maybe like two other friends that collected. But yeah, no, I mean, even today, like I mentioned, I think I was taking some time off from work to go to New York City Comic Con this past year. And I mentioned it to a coworker, and they kind of looked at me like, "You collect comics?" Like, they kind of gave me that
Yeah.
funny look, and I was like, "Yeah, well."
I
So
I get it because it's the same. I mean, especially people look at me and how I look, and then I'm out there, and people are like, you collect comic books? You on YouTube with that? I'm like, yeah, I am. Give me a follow, subscribe, check it out.
yeah, right. Come watch my channel. I need.
Yeah, and it's funny because back then I would have never thought about it. Nobody knew I collect. I didn't know anyone who collected, so I never talked comics with anyone. It
Right,
was just
right,
I read Wizard magazine. That's how I knew. And even when I went to the shop, I was only 13. I didn't really talk to anyone. I went in, got my books, and I left.
right, right,
Or if I went to like I said, most of them were at the spinner racks or the newsstand. I didn't talk to anyone. So
right.
finding this community, like I was like, oh my god, it was like word vomit, just every day talking about comics. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the connection that you make when you find it on YouTube because you're like, oh wait, there's so many other people out there that are like the same things I like,
Mm-hmm.
and there's that instant connection of we have a comic book collecting or even cards, right? There's a lot of card channels.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
the overall collecting community is big. Cards, diecast,
Toys, yeah, all
toys,
that.
yeah, yeah. There's so many different, you
The
know,
new thing is what uh video games now and
yeah,
consoles. It's crazy.
yeah. Well, and then now that whole grading of VHS tapes and video
Mm-hmm.
games, and it's yeah, it's kind of
It's
crazy.
like
I'm
they said,
trying.
it's like all the kids that grew up with that stuff. Now we have money and we want it again. So
That's right. We're working and we got cash, so now we can
yeah,
spend it. Yeah,
that's what it is. Honestly, what happened with me was during COVID, I got hit with like a wave of nostalgia getting going on YouTube and looking up stuff from the 80s when I was a kid. And it just that's when I because like that's another thing I collect, like a lot of nostalgia comics, like comics from the 80s and 90s of
Yeah, yeah. Some of the shows. Yeah, I've seen you.
yeah,
Yeah,
they needed cartoons, TV shows, movies, toys that we would have collected. I try to get their comic books first appearance or their first issue, and man, by following that, and you go on YouTube and you see so much nostalgia with that, I jump right into that, man. I love it.
yeah. I think that's probably the one downside, right, of watching so much YouTube, that you discover other things that now you want
Yeah, yeah.
to
Like
spend. And end up
I
spending
would
more money.
I would love to get into them statues, but boy,
Yeah, I know.
yeah, I'm not driving $1,000 for a statue, man.
No, yeah, they look great, and they look
Yeah,
great in other people's houses, not mine. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole either. I spend enough money on comics, so
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've pulled back some, man. It's
yeah,
when I first got in and I got into the whole when I realized comics and specking was, what was, the comics were worth so much money, and I found like Comic Tom, of course, and I found his channel, and I was like, wait a minute, they're talking about it like it was the stock market, and
right,
I didn't realize that. So my thing was I jumped into the whole New Comic Book Day spec type. I would buy multiple copies on New Comic Book Day, send them to CGC, and sell them when I got them, get that money, and then go buy like the books I really wanted, the ASM books, the Grails, stuff like that.
right.
So I used to drop like $200 a week on just new comic books. It was
Oh wow,
crazy. It was crazy. Now, no way. Now
yeah, yeah.
it's not the game ain't that crazy anymore.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, you can get definitely caught up in it, but I mean, I think most of us sell. We our collecting habits may change, so right, you may end up selling some books that you once collected and maybe you're not crazy about, from a storyline, or there's some other goal that you're trying to achieve, so you end up selling off some books because people, spec and people that flip books are, sometimes get a bad reputation, but
Yeah, we do.
all of us sell at
I
some
think
point
so.
or trade, or you know what I mean.
Hmm.
It's kind of strange to hear people, talk about it negatively when we pretty much all do it.
Yeah, I mean, I get what I think what some people are saying, like when you get the guys that go to a shop on Wednesday and grab a handful of something that nobody else could buy. That I understand. It's kind of a dick move, you know what I mean, to do that. That's
Yeah,
why
yeah,
I pre-order. I used to always pre-order, so I'm getting it. I'm not taking it out of no one else's hand. You know what I
right.
mean? But I really don't understand why it gets such a bad rep. Like, hey, I'm getting this book, other people actually want it, they can't get it, I'm providing it for them, and then I'm actually putting the money back into the community, back into a shop,
Right.
and buying an ASM Grail that I wanted. you know
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've run into that a few times where I've gone to, because I usually go, after work on Wednesdays to pick up my books, and there may be a book that I don't have on my pull list, but it's a variant cover, or a spec book, even facsimiles,
yeah,
and the shop will be sold out. I'll get to the shop at 4 or 5 o'clock and they're sold out, and because somebody got in there early and picked them all up.
yeah.
So,
But I
so yeah,
noticed that during after when COVID happened in 2020, if you weren't there in the first hour or two, because before I could go to my shop anytime, and then I remember at some point in 2020 when I would show up there was always a line waiting. I used to be the first one because I used to take Wednesdays off just to go to the shop, so I
okay,
would be there when they opened up. That way I could pick up my kids later. I didn't have to worry about it.
right,
Um,
right,
Midway through 2020, I would show up and there'll be a line. They would always have a line of people to get in. I've never seen that before in a comic shop until COVID. A line to get in and people running in to make sure they grab this book, that book, this variant. And I'm like, this is crazy, man.
yeah, yeah. Well, I guess that during that time, a lot of shops were either closed or not, or doing like curbside stuff. So,
Yeah.
I guess more people will try to buy books online. So that's why people are trying to scoop up,
Well,
multiple copies
I
of
was
books to try to sell them.
I was in Florida back then. They didn't close anything down back
Oh
then.
yeah, Florida was a little different. Yeah,
Yeah, they didn't close anything, man. Everything was open.
yeah. All right, so let's move on. We'll move on to the next question.
Okay.
If you had creative control over a comic book character, or even like a series, a book, and you could reboot it or do something on your own, who would you tackle? What would you do?
my first answer would be Spider-Man because that's my favorite, and I'm kind of not. I don't want to say anything bad about it because it's Spidey, but I feel like the run right, the last two runs are like, meh. You know, I'm
Yeah.
collecting it because it's ASM, but I'm almost at the point where I'm gonna collect it and not even read it anymore. You know what I mean? But
Right.
because it's just it's not that great. But I would love to give him a real reboot, not like the old. I know Ultimate Spider-Man, we kind of had that in Ultimate Spider-Man, but I felt like when they did Ultimate Spider-Man, they shoved so much down our throat so fast. Like every other month, every other week was a new villain, new this, new that. It was because they had to shove so much history down in that short amount of time. You know,
Right.
I would love a real reboot where they took their time again and started Peter over. You know, what I mean, I would like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was surprised because when I got back in, Amazing Spider-Man was the first book I picked up, and I picked up probably like maybe 20 issues in of volume 5, but I went back and read it from the beginning, and I was surprised that Spider-Man wasn't like he hadn't matured at all. Like
Yeah.
he's still the same, right? He was having trouble paying the rent. He
Mm-hmm.
was still, couldn't figure out what he's doing with MJ or Black Cat. And I'm like, I mean, I understand it's comic book, time frame, but he's a character that's been around for so long. I'm like, you think he would have learned a little bit more at this point.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know?
everybody. I feel like everybody else in comics has grown a little from. I mean, a lot of other characters have kids. Look at Batman and Superman.
Right.
You know, but in is right. He was. I forgot who was writing. That's the Nick Spencer one, right?
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
I literally started collecting right at the end of the previous run with the Red Goblin.
Okay.
That's when I jumped back in. When I saw Red Goblin, I'm like, oh, what the heck is this? I got to see this. So I was in the very beginning of the Nick Spencer run, and I'm like yeah, I'm like, what is this? It's like it's the same thing. Nothing's changed. But I remember reading because every now and then I would jump on Instagram or online. And I would read something of what was going on in the comic community. Like I had read about Spider Verse. I read about how Peter had got money and he was like, Parker Industries. So
Right.
I thought
Right.
this was going to be great. But I jumped in literally when he lost all that, and he's right
Right.
back to to
Right. And
just like
I
you.
never read any of that
Me
storyline.
neither.
But, so all right, he had his chance where, he had a company and he was making some money, but now he's back to being, he's having trouble paying the rent.
Yeah. They
So,
could find like a happy medium somewhere.
yeah.
They
Yeah,
don't got
no,
to be
I
Tony
agree. I
Stark,
mean,
but
you think, he's not a teenager anymore, right? He's in the storyline, he's like mid-20s. You think he would have, figured some things out by now.
yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, this new run, I like the last issue, but that was they had a guest creative team, so I don't know. Um,
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know what's going on with it. I almost want to say I want Spidey back. I want a good Spider-Man book, to read, and I feel like lately a lot of books coming out aren't they're not that great to read anymore, unless it's like an Elseworld or something from the multiverse or something going on with a different character, like a what if type of book,
Right.
you know.
The Miles, I've enjoyed the new Miles run.
Yeah, the
That's been
Cody
good.
Ziegler
That's
one,
is it Zeb Wells who's writing it? I think.
the Miles Morales.
Yeah, Miles. Oh
It's
no, Cody
Cody
Ziegler.
Ziegler. Cody
Cody
Ziegler's right.
Ziegler. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I enjoyed it too. That one's pretty good. If I'm gonna say Marvel, I would say the Miles, Punisher, Daredevil. I
yeah. That's
enjoy
pretty good.
Deb McKay's Moon Knight, but those I always have to pick those up. Always read those first. And I can't even think of anything else that's like, yo, must read,
Yeah, I mean, I pick up the Spider-Man because it's Spider-Man, but yeah, the
Mhm.
story, yeah, has been kind of really just up and down. So,
Yeah, I don't know.
all right. Next question:
Okay.
what's one thing that you dislike about whether it's the community on YouTube or collecting in general? One thing that you don't really care for.
Uh, collect. Well, let me see. I love the community, man. I don't think I can't say anything bad about it because I feel like the community helped me out a lot just by being there. You know what I mean? But I was saying collecting. the way they I really don't like how they constantly have to reboot Marvel reboots with number ones constantly instead of
Mm.
just letting it go through like they used to. And I remember, I think if you look at him, the original Spider-Man Volume 1, not amazing. The regular one, I believe in issue 50 or 50 something, they had a whole new creative team, and it just says it on there, whole new era creative team, and they kept it. It wasn't a new issue one. They didn't change anything. It wasn't like,
Right.
all right, what are they going to do? It continued everything. I'm like, why can't they do that? I don't really like the whole constant number ones and jumping over and going back and starting over again. And the variants, all them crazy variants. So they could get rid of that.
Well, and I think unfortunately, I think that's the way Marvel, at least Marvel. I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know if DC's done well. I mean, they've done it right with the New 52 and things like that, but
not as
Marvel
much as
seems to.
Marvel.
But Marvel seems to be really tied in on when you get a new creative team that you
Yeah,
reboot it and it's a new
it's
volume,
only
right?
number one because you know what I feel like Marvel now is in my mind. I picture like a whole big like a board and of people that really don't know anything about comics, and they just it's all money, and they're like, well, number one sell, so keep doing number ones.
Right.
New characters sell, so just throw new characters in there. Cameos and special appearances sell. Throw this, put Wolverine in here, do that. It's
Right.
no meat behind it. You know what I'm saying? It's just, hey, this is what sells. Variants, do this, do this.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. How can we sell more comic books,
Yeah, and
basically?
I
Yeah.
and I get it. It's money. You got to make money, but I feel like it's at the expense of the story.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's especially it felt that way with the dark web storyline.
Oh God, don't get me
Like
started on that.
I ended up picking up. I wasn't planning on picking up all of the different crossovers, but I did, and after reading it all, I said it really seemed like they could have probably just done this in the main, Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man story,
In
and
like
not have
two
to have
issues,
all these
in 3 issues,
tie-ins.
right?
Yeah,
It didn't. The concept, I didn't understand why the X-Men had it. Why it could have just been a simple Spider-Man versus Chasm. That's it.
Chasm. Yeah,
That would have been great because I liked the way he looks and everything, and I thought this was going to be awesome. But bringing in the Madeline Pryor and the X-Men to do like an Inferno 2, it was pointless. And like Ben didn't really fight Spider-Man except
right.
for spoiler and a little bit at the end. It felt pointless. It
Yeah,
really did.
yeah.
It
It
really
really
did.
wasn't done well. It seemed like it had potential, and then it never really paid off. I actually liked the X-Men storyline with Madeline Pryor better than the Spider-Man
A lot of
storyline
people
with.
said that. I didn't pick that up, but I heard that from a lot of people.
Yeah, that was better. That was seemed like it was more like that should have been the event almost, not the
And the X-Men could have done that separately. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
If they
yeah,
wanted
they
to.
could have. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, but I always said if you watch my videos, I've been saying the best thing out of Dark Web was Gold Goblin because I really enjoyed that one.
I do
But
too. I like the way. I'm interested to see what happens with Norman. Right? Does he continue to be the good guy, or does he eventually turn again? So
what do you
I
think?
found that's been interesting.
What do you think they're gonna do? He did eventually. They always got to go back to the status quo
Yeah,
eventually.
I mean, I'd be surprised if he doesn't. Right? If he doesn't end up
Hmm.
being the bad guy again, but we'll see. I mean, now he's got they're involving the grandkids now, and so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, my if I was betting on it, I'd say yeah, he's going to be the bad guy again.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you made it through. That's the four questions that I always ask everybody,
Okay.
and then we have two others. One random question that I'll pick, and a random. I have a list of questions. You'll give me a number, but my random question for you is going to be on some of the spec stuff.
Okay.
So, what is your goal like with the spec books? Is it really more of a short term spec, or is it more longer term, like getting books graded and sit on them, and maybe have them, you know, to sell for or is it just kind of the quick
It's,
spec
it's,
where
it's both actually.
okay,
It's kind of changed in the last year just because CDC's changed and the whole market's changed. But originally, um, I had jumped into. I had like when you get the old dollar bin spec. When I say dollar bin, I mean books under 10. You can find the $5 bins, $3
right,
bins, stuff like that. Dollar bins. Find those books, uh, get it graded, and hold on to it. until something happens in like whether it's a year or two or whenever. And then I also had like the new comic book day books, like I said, that I would send and just flip those just so I can buy the books I wanted. But with the spec, I did. It was a lot of them are it's mostly long term. Most of I got a whole like two short boxes of like long term. I'm just waiting, and if something hits, I'm like, I got it. You know what I mean? It's here.
Right.
And then there's some short term, like there's some that I have that I'm not expecting anything big. It's just to pay for my books for the next week or something. Like I know this is a few dollars. I'll get rid of it now, you know, because at the same time you got to figure out when is the right time to get rid of it. If it's worth grading, because by the time you get it back, the heat it might be cool,
Right.
it might have
Could be.
cooled
Yeah.
off. So you got to figure all that out, you know.
All right. Yeah. No, like I said, I think when you're a collector, no matter what you collect, you end up, there's speculation in all of it, right? I
Yeah,
mean, um, even, I'm a Spider-Man fan, but I'm hopeful that any of the Spider-Man books that I buy and collect that, in 10 years from now or 5 years from now, they're going to be worth more money. Not every single issue, right? Not every single issue is a key issue or, but I'm hopeful that those books will be worth more money in the future because, whether I sell them or give them to my kids or, whatever I do with them, that they appreciate and value over
yeah.
time. So,
And I'm in the same boat. Like I have a lot of mines, like the way I write there. I have my personal collections, the ones that are like I'm not selling these. These are mine. Unless it's huge, you know, a book jumps up like by a lot. But I have mine that these are my books. I'm not collecting, which is usually all my Spider-Man and X-Men and some other ones. There's some variants that I want to keep, and then I have boxes of books that are just for spec, and other ones that are like, hey, if something happens, I wouldn't mind getting rid of it because like anything Spider-Man, I think I have a really hard time getting rid of. A
yeah.
really hard time getting, even if it's like my ASM 252. It's a Mark Jewelers variant. So
Oh, okay.
I want to get that graded and press and clean because I press, but I wouldn't press that because it has the with Mark Jewelers they got the glue and all that, so you got to send that off
Right.
to
And
someone.
yeah, the Mark Jewelers inserts it's cardstock too. It's like a little
Yeah,
bit heavier,
it's not.
right? Yeah.
I want to. Well, it's not as hard as cardstock, but it's harder than regular paper,
Paper,
like
right.
comic book
Yeah. Okay.
paper. So I wanted to get that graded because everyone's like, "Yo, that's a Mark Jewelers," and it's where it could be worth so much money. And I'm like, "Yeah, but then I won't have 252 if I sell it. Like I want
Right.
252.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really don't care about the Mark Jewelers. I happened just to grab it off the wall when I got back in, and it was a Mark Jeweler. I don't even think they knew,
Oh,
but
wow. Okay.
yeah, but I don't know. Like I get it. I don't know if I could get rid of certain books like Spider Man, uh, the books that meant to me when I was younger. They might not even be worth a lot. Like
Right.
Superman 75. That's not worth hardly anything. But for me, that was huge for me. So like I have mine that I had, uh, like the trade paperback. I still
Right.
had some of those. And I still, even though that's not worth anything, but I'm like, it means something to me, so I
Right.
wouldn't get rid
Yeah.
of
It's a
that.
book that you picked up. You picked off the spinner rack or at the store. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I that's one of my big regrets because I had my books for so long that I carried around. I had like four long boxes too, and that's when I got back in, and I started selling those books. And those were books that same thing I picked up at the convenience store. The
Yeah,
books that I've had for 40, 30 years, 40 years, and um, those are some of the books I sold. So I regret that I don't have that original copy that I picked up, but I
and those were
know it's
probably all newsstands because you
yeah,
picking them up.
most of them were newsstand, but I
Mhm.
know I can always pick them back up, over time, but it won't
Yeah,
be that original book that I, went to the 7-Eleven and picked up. So,
yeah. I wish I had my original books because like that's one thing when I jumped back in and I started seeing like the Comic Times and all that people talking about the prices. And I'm like, oh man, I had that book and I paid cover price. And I
right.
had that one. I had this one. And I'm like, oh my god, like that book that's out right now that everyone's talking. Not out now. I think it's Batman Superman 8 or 9, the one with Supergirl that's on a top 10 list now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I had this. It's a rare book back then, but not rare, but not a lot of people would have still had it. I know I had that one. There's so many books that I had, and I regret, you know, losing them.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I said, I feel the same way. I when I first got back in, it was really more about selling my books than collecting, and then slowly I realized like, oh, I want to start collecting again, and now I regret, selling those some of those original ASM books that I had. So
But you
yeah,
know how the way I got into like selling them was because I started collecting in 2018, but my and my ex-wife's cousin that he started collecting around the Civil War time, original Civil War, and that was like the first person I knew. He would come to me like, "Hey, what's this? What's that?" And we would talk. But I didn't collect that much longer after that. Well, he still had all those books, and he just got married. This was in 2020. He had just got married. No, I'm sorry, 2021. And he hits me up and he's like, "Hey, man, I gotta get rid of these books. Do you want them?" And I was already into comics about 2 years into it, three. But then I had just found out about like the values of the books and all that,
right.
and I had just found out through YouTube. So I was like, yeah, bring me the books, man. We had Young Avengers 1 in there, the whole Young Avengers run, the original one, the New Avengers run he had in there. Nothing, it was all modern stuff, but it was a lot of books that I had and that were grails now too. So it was great to have. And once I jumped into that, and I sold like you, I sold a lot, and I'm like, damn, I shouldn't have sold that one. Like,
Right, I know.
I sold that Young Avengers one. That's one I probably should have held on to.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a set too because I bought. It was funny because when I got back in too, I started. Well, I was selling my books, and before I really started collecting again, I bought a few collections, and so from people that were selling them locally, and I was just really with the intent to flip them. And I had Young Avengers series that I sold. I had Clone War. I found a Clone Wars 1 and had it graded. It came back a 9.6. I ended up selling it. And I wish I would have kept that book
Yeah.
now because I got it. I bought like 10 long boxes for like $400, and the Clone Wars book was
Oh
in
my
there.
god.
Clone Wars 1 was in there. Got it graded, came back a 9.6. So that was like a $1,500 book.
Yeah, that's. But I mean, $400. That's a steal. That's a
Yeah,
steal.
and it was like the guy I bought it from, he was moving and he didn't want to take. He was moving from I think New York to Florida, and he didn't want to take the books with him, so he was just trying to get rid of them.
That's what
Um,
you for, man.
I picked up them up, and I didn't at the time. I'm just going through the books, and I pulled out. I didn't even know what the book was. I pulled it out, and Clone Wars. I knew the Clone Wars series, and then I looked it up, and I was like, oh wow, that's a big book. That's a valuable book.
Yeah. And
So
I'm trying to do that. That's when I moved to New York about a year ago, and that's what I wanted to do when I came here. I wanted to start buying collections and doing that. Just flipping the collection because I was told that upstate New York is big. You can find a lot of good little honeypots and gold mines out here.
right,
Because I felt like Central Florida, where I was at, was tapped out, man. After COVID, all the shops were tapped out, all the people selling it were tapped out. So I didn't start yet because I've been a little busy. But I feel like now this year I'm gonna start expanding, going a little bit more north, and try to find some collections and get
I
into that.
know. Do you watch Very Gary?
Yes,
Yeah, so he's in the upstate New York area, Westchester area, I think.
we go to the same LCS.
Oh, we do. Okay, all right. So
Yeah,
yeah. So because I know he's always he's buying
I'll give them a
collections.
shout out. Alterniverse in Hyde Park. Just want to give them a quick shout out. If you're in the Hudson Park, New York area, definitely check them out.
So yeah, I see Gary all the time, like posting videos of collections that he's picked up,
Yeah,
you
he
know,
gets some
from
great ones.
from upstate New York. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
you
I
got to
was
you
just
got to
at
get
my
out there. You got to beat Gary to.
Yeah, that's enough. But he'll drive. It's crazy because I was just at my LCS today, and we were talking about collections, and he brought up Very Gary, how he went with Very Gary to go to buy one time, and it wasn't really worth it, and sometimes they take a long drive. And the
Right.
same thing we're doing. We were talking about buying collections and all that, and he was telling me about some of the times he did it with Gary, and how it's hit or miss sometimes because you don't really
Right.
know what they have.
Yeah, I mean, I've Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. You can find but there were times where I'd go look at some stuff and there was nothing. But
Yeah,
then there were two times like I bought two collections, and like I said, I ended up pulling the Clone Wars 1, which basically more than tripled my money from what I paid for that entire collection in that one book. So
yeah, for real.
yeah, sometimes you get lucky.
Maybe when it get warms up, they'll have some. yard sale or garage sales. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I always try to do that too. Yeah, that's the other downside about Northeast, right? We get the winter months. There's no flea markets, no garage sales, no yard sales. 'Cause it's too cold.
now there is a flea market. My father found one. It's called a flea market, but it's only like twice. They only do it twice in the summertime for 2 days. One in the beginning of the summer and at the end.
Okay.
It's one of those in a big field, and there's a bunch of
Yeah, yeah.
tables.
Just like a big event. Yeah.
Yeah, and he knew about it ahead of time, so he told me to go. We went. Man, there was like 4 or 5 vendors with comics, but they had so many comics. But at this point, like I would try to go through it, you weren't gonna find any deal. It wasn't you weren't gonna find any deals. You know what I mean? Everybody already
Right.
knows. I felt like they already knew what they had, and everything was priced. You know, you weren't gonna find. I didn't buy
Right.
anything. You know, I went there, went through all that. I wound up leaving with nothing. So
Well, and I think that's the bad thing today, right? Because everybody think there's so much news and information out there
Mhm.
about comic books because of all the movies that everybody thinks every comic book is worth,
Yeah.
a ton
And
of
they don't
money.
take the time to realize, hey, the price that you're seeing is for a 9.8. That book with all
Right.
those spine ticks and all that, that's like a 3 or 4. Like it's not worth that, you know.
Right. Yeah,
But
I've seen some
they don't want
crazy.
to hear that at the flea market. I'm like, hey, I'll
No, no.
give you, you know.
Yeah, I've seen some crazy prices on some raw books that were beat up and that
Yeah.
should be not priced what they were. So, all right. So why don't we'll get to your final question. So it's a
All right.
random question. So just give me a number 1 through 50, and I'll ask you that question.
1 through 50.
Yeah,
Okay.
just give me a random number 1 through 50.
Uh, 5.
5. Oh. If you could go back in time, what year would you travel to?
1986. I think about that all the time, so that was easy to answer. I'm sorry. Yeah, 86. Yeah, 86. I think that was just a great year for pop culture. A great year for me as a kid. With back then, I was huge into like WWF wrestling. I loved like the whole like Transformers, GI Joe, the Saturday morning cartoons, all that. So I always like I would go back to right there just so I could
And
wake up on a Saturday.
if you know what you know now, you'd save a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of those toys
oh yeah, all those toys.
and comics. Yeah.
Yeah, and cards and everything everything else that I had back then.
Oh, that's funny. All right.
That was an easy one.
That's it. You made it through all the questions.
All right.
So, links are down below. So if you're not familiar with Empire Comics, links to both his YouTube channel and Instagram are in the description. And he's on the road to 1,000 subs. He's in like the 950,
Uh,
960 range, I think.
963, I believe.
All right, so we're
963.
getting close. We're over 950. So he's in the home stretch to 1,000. He's trying to
I'm
hit
hope
that. So if you're
I'm
not
hoping
familiar,
to do a giveaway when I hit 1,000.
all right. So you heard it here. Giveaway when he hits 1K. So go sub him up. Check out his channel. I always enjoy watching your unboxings and your spec videos
For
because
sure.
you usually have like a stack of comics. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so it's always fun to watch because you just it's new comic books, but it's also like you said some of the shows that you used to watch as a kid that you'll pick up, and then some of the like you said inexpensive spec books. So
Yeah,
I
like the dollar
always
bin specs and all
I always enjoy watching those videos because it's like just endless books.
that.
So, but before we wrap up, anything else that you want to mention or
No, I want to thank you for having me, man. I want to thank you for that push to. You've been helping with the whole promoting me on your channel with a few other people with the push to 1K. I really appreciate that. Um, Stay tuned, guys, because there's going to be a lot of new stuff in the channel with the market changing and CGC prices how they are. I feel like I'm going back to a little bit more. I'm still specking and I'm still buying for that, but I want to go back to buying what I enjoy more. You know, because I kind of went off a little bit, with the whole going crazy with spec, and I want to go back to what my grail runs and what I originally wanted. But I'm working with someone else on YouTube. We want to do like a low budget spec show, like a live spec show. We're
nice.
working on that. And I'm gonna go back to doing my if you go back to I used to do my like top 10 spec, a little show like that with like breakdown of the books. That's coming back really soon as well.
All right, good. So good, some good things to look forward to. So
Mhm.
definitely go sub up Empire. Like I said, links are down below. Let's help them, help them get to 1,000. I know there's a few other channels too that I'm trying to help promote. I was lucky enough to hit 1,000 recently,
Yes,
and
sir.
so
Congrats.
definitely thank you. I definitely want to try to help others and within the community to grow. So. I always enjoy just sitting down with other community members to get to know them a little bit better and know a little bit about their history with collecting. So appreciate
Yeah.
you coming on and answering all
Thanks for
my.
having me, man. It was fun, man. I love talking comics. Anytime you want to do this again, just shoot me a line.
That's it. We got to get you doing more. I know you're starting to do some lives. You just did a lot
Uh,
your first live, so that's the
yeah,
next big thing for you.
it's nerve wracking for me, man. But I want to do it more. I want to try to do it more. So maybe I'll jump into when you have one. I'll jump on with
All
you.
right, sounds good. Well, thanks for being on. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you soon.
All
Take
right,
care.
later.